Welcome back to another edition of Max and Nikki 1000th Time Reactions.
I'm Max.
And I'm Nikki.
And today we're going to be listening to Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys.
We're going to be listening for our 1000th time, right?
Although I will say we have listened to it well over 1,000 times.
Sure. When we were delivery drivers in high school, we would hear it all the time on the oldies stations.
And plus the Beach Boys are a big influence on
Very
us.
big influence on our own music. But before we get into it, just want to remind you all that like I usually do, that we have another YouTube channel called Max and Nikki, on which we perform oldies tunes, jazz standards, and originals in that vein.
And we got some comedy videos on there as well. But without further ado, let's listen to Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys
For our 1000th time.
I love the colorful clothes she wears and the way the sunlight plays upon her head. I hear the sound of a gentle wind on the wind that lifts her perfume through the air. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Close my eyes. She's somehow closer now. Softly smile, I know she must be kind. In her eyes, she goes with me to a blossom room. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me excitation, good vibrations. She's giving me excitation, good vibrations. She's giving me I don't know where, but she sends me there. My sensation, my elation, gotta keep those loving good vibrations are happening with her. Gotta keep those loving good vibrations are happening with her. Gotta keep those loving good
All right. That was, we just heard Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys for our,
1,000th time.
For
Just
all,
for the
for
sake
intents
of
and
this
purposes,
channel,
we'll
let's just
say it's the
our
1,000th. But we
time.
have heard this song thousands of times,
Although this is the remastered version,
which is very interesting. Something we noted because we were trying to listen to the best version possible for this reaction. And we were listening to the mono version from the 60s
and the stereo version from the
stereo
60s, and there seems to be some interesting new interesting
Volume,
things, volume aberrations, I guess. you
Yeah,
could say.
exactly. Yeah, they're almost as if there's so many things going on in the song that in the 60s they had to pod down the volume of some instruments for other instruments and other voices to shine through a little bit more.
Right. It was interesting. Yeah, interesting. If you have a chance, take a listen to those original recordings. There's some interesting, and use headphones.
Sure.
Some nice headphones, and
But-
you'll notice some interesting things going on.
As far as this remastered version goes, it's first of all, there's some really cool things going on. Obviously, there's this song is like almost an experiment in pop symphonic music or something
Well,
like
it
that.
kind of, I think, kind of started what you can consider maybe Baroque pop. Actually,
Sure, yeah.
There was, other bands later on would start to, do that kind of sound where they involved a lot of maybe strings and other instruments that were part of the symphony.
Sure.
And just had kind of more, flourishes and things like that.
Sure, there's a lot of like single snare drum hits, and things like that in this song
One
that just
thing
pop up out of nowhere. Oh, I wanted to say
ahead.
something about. I think it was the snare drum. It might have been another instrument. There were so many things going on; it's hard to keep track of everything. But the reverb for the snare drum. So the snare drum I was hearing in my on the left side, but the reverb for it I was hearing on the right side.
Okay,
which
that's
was interesting.
interesting to note. But also, I noticed something in the very beginning, maybe in the first 30 seconds or so. It seems like they, you can hear an edit.
Oh,
which is interesting.
That's something I was going to mention.
Because it gets off time just ever so slightly, and noticeably actually, and you're like, oh, they must have edited for 2 different takes.
It's
together
not
there,
just that. No, I noticed edits throughout the whole track.
Sure.
And I think it's because there's so many things going on that it must have been a little bit hard to piece this track all together,
Right, I think it was done piecemeal, as they say.
Sure.
Some other cool things in this are obviously the use of the theremin.
Sure.
That's I think
That's
this
the
is maybe
instrument
the
that
first,
goes,
that kind of a thing.
yeah, that kind of thing.
I think this is the first pop hit to really use that. Certainly one of the most well-known hits to use the theremin. But not just that, there's that interest, the cello's doing this thing in the right ear, if you notice, that's going.
I think that was, don't quote me on this, but I think that was Van Dyke Park's idea, actually.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I know that if you ever seen the movie Love and Mercy, that's what it's called, right? Mm-hmm. Which is based on Brian Wilson's life. They'd show a scene of him, recording the cellist, and he gets so perfectionist about it, and he keeps having the person re-record this, and there are so many takes. I don't know if this has actually happened in real life, but from what I understand, it was pretty close to his kind of. He was starting to, lose it a little bit at that point.
Brian Wilson, that is.
Brian Wilson.
Now, Van Dyke Parks, if you don't know, he's a very famous arranger and orchestrator and producer. There's an album by Joanna Newsom called Ease, and he orchestrated the whole string section for that album, and it's very beautiful. Highly recommend checking that album out.
Well,
but
also their unfinished album, was it not? It wasn't released, or was it released in a
Smile.
Smile.
It was released as Smiley Smile originally, but that wasn't completely Brian Wilson's vision at the time.
Right. No, it was released in a way that he was not totally satisfied with, but because of I think budget reasons and just I think he had a mental breakdown. Anyway, we're rambling on about this a little too much.
Yeah,
but
if you want to find, we're supposed to be reacting to this, not giving you guys a history lesson, but it is interesting to know the backstory of this song because this is, you know, at this point, you know, Pet Sounds had come out already, which is, you know, in our opinion,
One of, if not the best album of all time.
best pop album of all time,
Sure.
rather. But that didn't get the kind of reception that Brian Wilson had hoped for in America. It was highly lauded in England, though, in the
That's
UK at
right.
the time. But so they felt like, oh, they really had to get a hit on their hands. And so he was almost forced to release Good Vibrations a little bit sooner than the album that he was going for was, you know, ready to be released. And
Okay.
he ultimately didn't get his way on what eventually became the Smile album. So
Right.
they released an album called Smiley Smile. And later in 2004, Brian Wilson released as a solo record Smile, which was all
More or less how he had envisioned it, I guess.
he had envisioned the album that he wanted to release in the 60s to be. And
But who knows? I mean, so many years had gone by, you know.
sure,
who
but it
knows
is
if
check out Smile from 2004.
Sure,
It's a very
but
good
just
album.
to, you know, finish up on Good Vibrations, I mean, there's some other interesting instruments in there, like there's a prepared piano, which kind of makes it sound like this kind of honky-tonk kind of piano. But what they do is they kind of add stuff on top of the strings in the piano to make it sound...
Well, there's lots of very cool things, even in that sort
quite
of
a piano.
interlude part toward the end. I guess you could call it a bridge section where it's softer, you know. Gotta keep those love
good
vibrations are happening. Anyway, that part.
What a cool
there's-
part, though,
there's
by the way,
it's,
guys.
It's my favorite part of the
It's
song.
really great. It's the
but
best
there's-
part of the song.
There's a bass that comes in at one point, and
Sure.
and it's really cool when it comes in. It's just and it's in your left ear if you're listening with headphones.
Right, that's kind of
and
the
then,
neat part.
And then the way the voices sort of meld into sort of this harmonica, which is really cool.
Right,
you know?
and it kind of has this. I mean, some people liken it to sort of being in kind of like has this kind of Western kind of sound, like you're on the
Sure.
dusty trail or something. But I
doesn't
never
sound like that to me.
I never thought about that growing up. I've heard some people recently talk about it like that. But to me, it just has this kind of, you know, soft, kind of
ethereal,
almost kind of
sure.
quality that just fades out, and you kind of want to. You
just-
just
you
fade
almost-
out with
you
it.
wanna
in a
fade
way,
out
you
with
know?
it, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Anyway, great song. We'll
Obviously,
Get
we
to-
had a lot to talk about it because
the Beach Boys really
Boys
are
a big influence on us, and we love this song and many others by the Beach Boys.
Sure. Well, we will do some songs from Pet Sounds soon enough, and
Sure.
some songs prior to that. I mean, there's some really good songs on the album today, right?
Sure, great album there as well.
And other great songs from before that. Anyway,
I think that'll do it for this episode of 1000th Time Reactions.
don't forget to hit that subscribe and post notification bell to find out more Max and Nikki reaction videos coming up.
And tune in for the next one.